Ben-Gurion was born David Józef Grun in Blonsk, Poland, in 1886. From an early age, he followed in his father's footsteps as a Zionist activist. In 1906, he migrated to Palestine and, thanks to his charisma and determination, soon became one of the leaders of the Yishuv, despite his youth. He then changed his name to Ben-Gurion after another of the leaders of the revolt against the Romans. Haganah, in its early years, was influenced by the spirit and aggressive attitude of Hashimer. On May 1st, 1921, an Arab mob massacred 14 Jews in an immigrants' hostel in Jaffa. After learning that an Arab police officer by the name of Tevfik Bey had helped the mob get into the hostel, Haganah had sent a hit squad to depose of him, and on January 17, 1923, he was shot dead in the middle of Tel Aviv Street. As a matter of honor, he was shot from the front and not the back, according to one of those involved, and the intention was to show the Arabs that their deeds are not forgotten, and their day will come, even if belatedly. The members of Hashimer who led the Haganah at the outset were even willing to commit acts of violence against fellow Jews. Jacob de Haan was a Dutch-born Haredi, an ultra-Orthodox Jew living in Jerusalem in the 1920s. He was a propagandist for the Haredi belief that only the Messiah could establish a Jewish state, that God alone would decide when to return the Jews to their ancestral homeland, and that humans trying to expedite the process were committing a grave sin. In other words, de Haan was a staunch anti-Zionist, and he was surprisingly adept at swaying international opinion. To Yitzhak Ben Zevi, by now a prominent Haganah leader, that made de Haan dangerous. That made de Haan dangerous. So he ordered his death. On June 30th, 1924, just a day before de Haan was to travel to London to ask the British government to reconsider its promise to establish a Jewish nation in Palestine, 2 assassins shot him 3 times as he emerged from a synagogue on Jaffa Road in Jerusalem. Ben-Gurion, however, took a dim view at such acts. He realized that in order to win eventual partial recognition from the British for Zionist aims, he would have to enforce orderly and more moderate norms on the semi-underground militia under his command. Hashimer's brave and lethal lone riders were replaced after the de Haan murder with an organized, hierarchical armed force. Ben-Gurion ordered Haganah to desist from using targeted killings. Quoted, "As to personal terror, Ben-Gurion's line was consistently and steadily against it," Haganah commander Yisrael Galilee testified later, and he recounted a number of instances in which Ben-Gurion had refused to approve proposals for his hit against individual Arabs. These included the Palestinian leader Haj Amin al-Husseini and other members of the Arab Higher Committee, and British personnel such as a senior official in the Mandate's Lands Authority who was obstructing Jewish settlement projects. Not everyone was eager to acquiesce to Ben-Gurion. Avraham Tehomi, the man who shot de Haan, despised the moderate line Ben-Gurion took against the British and the Arabs, and together with some other leading figures, he quit Haganah and in 1931 formed the Irgun Zvai Leumi, the National Military Organization, whose Hebrew acronym is ETZL, usually referred to in English as IZL, or the Irgun. This radical right-wing group was commanded in the 1940s by Menachem Begin, who in 1977 was to become the Prime Minister of Israel. Inside the Irgun, too, there were clashes, personal and ideological. Opponents of Begin's agreement to cooperate with Britain in its war against the Nazis broke away and formed Lehi. For these men, any cooperation with Britain was anathema. These two dissident groups both advocated to different degrees the use of targeted killings against Arab and British enemies, and against Jews they considered dangerous to their cause. Ben-Gurion remained adamant that targeted killings would not be used as a weapon and even took aggressive measures against those who did not obey his orders. But then World War II ended, and everything, even the views of the obstinate Ben-Gurion, changed. During World War II, some 38,000 Jews from Palestine volunteered to help and serve the British Army in Europe. The British formed the so-called Jewish Brigade, albeit somewhat reluctantly and only after being pressured by Yishuv's civilian leadership. Unsure exactly what to do with the brigade, the British first sent it to train in Egypt. It was there, in mid-1944, that its members first heard of the Nazi campaign of Jewish annihilation. When they were finally sent to Europe to fight in Italy and Austria, they witnessed the horrors of the Holocaust firsthand and were among the first to send detailed reports to Ben-Gurion and other leaders of the Yishuv. One of those soldiers was Mordecai Zhikon, who later would be one of the founders of the Israeli military intelligence. Born in Berlin in 1922, Zhikon had a father who was Russian and a mother who was the scion of a famous German Jewish family, niece of Rabbi Leo Bech, a leader of Germany's liberal or Reform Jews. Zhikon's family moved to Palestine in 1933 after Mordecai had been required in his German school to give the Nazi salute and sing the party anthem. He returned as a soldier to Europe in ruins. His people nearly destroyed, their communities smoldering ruins. The Jewish people had been humiliated, trampled, murdered. He said, "Now was the time to strike back and take revenge. In my dreams, when I enlisted, revenge took the form of me arresting my best friend from Germany, whose name was Detlev, the son of a police major. That's how I'd restore lost Jewish honor." It was that sense of lost honor, of a people's humiliation, as much as rage at the Nazis that drove men like Zhikon, I think that's how you pronounce it. He first met the Jewish refugees on the border between Austria and Italy. The men of the brigade fed them, took off their own uniforms to clothe them against the cold, tried to draw out of them details of the atrocities they had undergone. He remembers an encounter in June 1945 in which a female refugee came upon him. "She broke away from her group and spoke to me in German," he said. She said, "You, the soldiers of the brigade, are the sons of Bar Kokhba, the great hero of the Second Jewish Revolt against the Romans in AD 132 through 135. She said, I will always remember your insignia and what you did for us." Zhikon was flattered by the Bar Kokhba, K-O-K-H-B-A, Kokhba analogy, but for her to raise in her... Zhikon was flattered by the Bar Kokhba analogy, read poorly, but for her praise and gratitude, Zhikon felt only pity and shame. If the Jews in the brigade were the sons of Bar Kokhba, who were these Jews? The soldiers from the land of Israel, standing erect, tough, and strong, saw the Holocaust survivors as victims who needed help, but also as part of the European Jewry who had allowed themselves to be massacred. They embodied the cowardly, feeble stereotype of Jews of the diaspora, the exile, in traditional Jewish and Zionist parlance, who surrendered rather than fought back, who did not know how to shoot or wield a weapon. It was that image, in its most extreme version, the Jew as a Musulman, prisoners slang for the emaciated, zombie-like inmates hovering near death in the Nazi camps, that the new Jews of the Yishuv rejected. My brain could not grasp, not then and not today, how it could have been that there were tens of thousands of Jews in a camp with only a few German guards, but they did not rise up. They simply went like lambs to the slaughter. Zhikon said more than 60 years later, "Why didn't they tear the Germans to shreds? I've always said that no such thing could happen in the land of Israel. Had those communities had leaders worthy of the name, the entire business would have looked completely different." In the years following the war, the Zionists of the Yishuv would prove, both to the world and more important to themselves, that the Jews would never again go to such slaughter, and that Jewish blood would not come cheaply. The 6 million would be avenged. "We thought we could not rest until we had exacted blood for blood, death for death," said Hanok Bartov, a highly regarded Israeli novelist who enlisted in the brigade a month before his 17th birthday. Such vengeance, though, atrocity for atrocity, would violate the rules of war and likely be disastrous for the Zionist cause. Ben-Gurion, practical as always, publicly said as much. Revenge now is an act of no national value. It cannot restore life to the millions who were murdered. Still, the Haganah leaders privately understood the need for some sort of retribution, both to satisfy the troops who had been exposed to the atrocities and also to achieve some degree of historical justice and deter future attempts to slaughter Jews. Thus, they sanctioned some types of reprisals against the Nazis and their accomplices. Immediately after the war, a secret unit authorized and controlled by the Haganah High Command and unknown to the British commanders was set up within the brigade. It was called the Gemul, Hebrew for recompense. The unit's mission was revenge, but not a robber's revenge. As a secret memo at the time put it, revenge against those SS men who themselves took part in the slaughter. We looked for big fish, Mordecai Gicon said, breaking a vow of silence among the Gemul commanders that he'd kept for more than 60 years. The senior Nazis who had managed to shed their uniforms and return to their homes. All that read poorly. I'm so tired of recording these. Like, I've done this same shit 3 times, arguing with my recording software, arguing with the way the book's written. Like, you're just gonna get fucking shit recordings read poorly by Tom. The Gemul agents worked undercover even as they performed their regular brigade duties. Chacon himself assumed 2 fake identities, one as a German civilian, the other as a British major, as he hunted Nazis. In expeditions under his German cover, Chacon recovered the Gestapo archives in Tarvisio, Villach, and, oh hell yeah, and Klagenfurt, to which fleeing Nazis had set fire, but only a small part of which actually burned. Operating as the British major, he gleaned more names from Yugoslavian communists who were still afraid to carry out revenge attacks themselves. A few Jews and American intelligence also were willing to help by handing over information they had on escaped Nazis, which they thought the Palestinian Jews would use to better effect than the American military. Coercion worked too. In June 1945, Gemul agents found a Polish-born German couple who lived in Tarvisio. The wife had been involved in transferring stolen Jewish property from Austria and Italy to Germany, and her husband had helped run the regional Gestapo office. The Palestinian Jewish soldiers offered them a stark choice: cooperate or die. The Goy broke and said he was willing to cooperate, said Yisrael Karmi, who interrogated the couple and later, after Israel was born, would become the commander of the Israeli Army's military police. I assigned him to prepare lists of all the senior officials that he knew and who had worked with the Gestapo and the SS. Name, date, oh my fucking god, these stupid fucking pyramids. Pyramids? What am I thinking of? These stupid fucking periods. Stupid fucking periods, stupid fucking commas all over the place with hyphens to teach you shit that's not even fucking complex. I fucking hate this. I hate the way this guy writes. Fucking hate this. The Goy broke and said he was willing to cooperate, said Yisrael Karmi, who interrogated the couple later, after Israel was born, would become, and after, what the fuck? The Goy broke and said he was willing to cooperate, says Yisrael Karmi, who interrogated the couple, and later, after Israel was born, would become the commander of the Israeli Army's military police. I assigned him to prepare lists of all the senior officials that he knew and who had worked with the Gestapo and the SS, name, date of birth, education, and positions. What a stupid fucking way of talking.